Karen loved music from childhood. Even when she was very small, she would crawl to the edge of her crib, grasping the wooden partition with her little hands. She would stand up and tap her feet to the rhythm of the music. When her grandmother sat with her, she exclusively played classical music. The grandmother believed in introducing the girl to the good and proper taste. And Karen was getting accustomed. Throughout her childhood, Vivaldi, Mozart, Bach, Shostakovich, and many others accompanied her. At the age of 3, Karen was shown to a music teacher. "Absolute pitch," exclaimed the music school teacher, clapping her hands. "Unfortunately, we don't accept such little kids. You need to wait a couple more years. But I won't lose sight of you." "Leave me your phone number," said the teacher, catching up with Karen and her grandmother in the corridor. She offered private lessons. That's how Karen started attending music classes on Sundays. Well, her grandmother took her, or rather carried her. It seemed that the parents had other things on their minds. Dad worked around the clock, 7 days a week, and Mom was unwell. She seemed to have taken everything from me. With sadness in her voice, Mother said when she occasionally saw the child, "Health, beauty, strength. Okay, that's enough, take her away." Illness made her irritable and nervous. Often, she said things she didn't mean or meant things she didn't say. Endless hospital stays, surgeries, chemotherapy. Karen's grandmother suffered. After all, her son suffered too. He seemed not to notice Karen at all, busy with his wife. Even she had stopped fighting. It was clear to everyone that there wasn't much time left. And only Karen's father continued to fetch medicines, arrange meetings with professors. How many times had the grandmother told him, maybe you should let her go? Maybe carry out certain procedures in a specialized institution, where they will take care of her, and finally, pay attention to the child. But he heard nothing. The grandmother even hinted that it would be worth doing it for the sake of the child, so that the girl wouldn't see all this dirt, medicines, and moans. Is this good for Karen? The girl grew up, as if in a hospital, without knowing her mother. Once, she and her grandmother had a very serious quarrel. The grandmother hinted that if he were a normal father, he would have long ago sent this living corpse to a hospice, brought home a normal, healthy woman. While Karen was little, she wouldn't even have known that her mother wasn't her biological mother. Dad got angry and almost kicked the grandmother out of the house. Then he changed his mind in time and brought her back. But they didn't talk for a month. When Karen turned 6, she was accepted into a music school in the violin class. The same teacher who taught Sasha in childhood was shocked by the tragedy. She promised to come to support Karen. So it happened that the future stepmother met Karen's father at the funeral of her mother. Even then, the grandmother noticed that the teacher supported not so much Karen as her father. But wasn't that what she wanted? Well, what's wrong if the music teacher knows the girl, admires her talent? And again, music is never a bad thing for a mentor to be constantly around. In general, the grandmother herself pushed the teacher towards her son. Maybe finally Karen will have a normal mother? Not a bald monster constantly moaning in bed, the grandmother thought. She couldn't even imagine that she brought a completely different, more cunning and cruel monster into the house. But it all started well. Just a year after Karen's mother's death, her father and the music teacher got married. The first thing the new mistress did was to kick the grandmother out of the house. Now there are no sick people here, and Karen can manage without outside help. "True, my dear, we are friends, aren't we?" she said and patted the girl on the head. Karen leaned against her as if she were her own. In general, the grandmother left, and everything seemed fine, just as she wanted. Finally, her son brought home a normal, healthy woman. At last, everything is as it should be, and it was as if a stone had been placed on her shoulders, and her heart was squeezed in hedgehog gloves. And maybe because the grandmother, for the first time in her life, found herself so far from Karen, she would get used to it, endure it, thought the grandmother as she traveled by train to her village, where she hadn't been for 6 years since she came with Karen's birth to her son and stayed there. But no, when there are holidays, the girl will come for a visit, they promised. But Karen didn't come. The son said they didn't have time, and it's too early to let her go alone by train. "Grandma, let me talk to Grandma," the old woman heard Karen shouting into the phone. "But let me talk to my granddaughter," the grandmother said. "And she's not at home." "Well, give me, it's time," lied the son and hung up. Something's not right, the grandmother's heart skipped a beat. What's going on there? For several days, the grandmother couldn't find peace. She decided to go, and as soon as she started packing her suitcase, she received a telegram: "Karen has died. Funeral on the 15th. What nonsense, what jokes, the grandmother rushed to the station. Almost as she was, a night on the train, and she was already in Moscow. Everything was like in a fog. Tears blurred her eyes. There was no one at her son's house. Apparently, the telegram wasn't lying. Mirrors covered in black. A photo of Karen with a black ribbon in the corner. God, what has she done? Why did she listen to that woman? And there was nothing left for Karen. She would have protected the girl. The grandmother blamed herself. In the evening, it turned out that Karen had a sudden cardiac arrest. This happens with children in the period from 6 to 12 years old, sudden child death. Don't think, please, if your child runs, talks, and plays the violin, then all danger has passed. There are several critical ages in the life of any child when the body undergoes growth and hormonal changes. And not always everything goes correctly. 3 years, 6 to 15, the most dangerous dates in the life of any child. Don't neglect it. It is during this time that hidden diseases and malfunctions appear. The grandmother noticed the violin case hanging on the wall in Karen's room. It had a thick layer of dust, as if the instrument hadn't been touched for several months. Did Karen stop going to music lessons? The grandmother asked. She didn't want to herself, we didn't insist, shrugged the father. She said she played only because you wanted her to, and as soon as you left, she quit music, said the stepmother. It was all very strange. The grandmother couldn't believe it. How many times had she herself taken the violin away from her granddaughter and sent her out to play? Something was not right here. For the funeral, the grandmother took the violin with her. She insisted on placing the violin in the coffin with the girl because she knew for sure that Karen loved her violin and didn't believe the stepmother's stories. Fortunately, there was enough space in the coffin. They hurried to bury the child and didn't wait to make a child-sized coffin. They took a regular coffin, and after the farewell, when the coffin had already been lowered into the grave, and everyone had thrown symbolic handfuls of soil, the sounds of the violin and orchestra rang out. It had nothing to do with it. No one had ordered an orchestra for the funeral. There was a funeral silence around, and from under the ground came Karen's favorite melody. "What kind of mysticism is this?" the grandmother asked. "No mysticism at all. Get the coffin out quickly," the grandmother commanded. The girl turned out to be alive. She threw herself into her grandmother's arms, screaming for her to take her away. An ambulance was called, and in the hospital, Karen told that right after her grandmother left, the stepmother seemed to replace her. She didn't let the girl go out, and no one was planning to take her to music lessons. And they didn't let her go for holidays so she wouldn't complain. Why do you need music? Learn to clean instead, because being a cleaner is the only thing you'll ever achieve, the stepmother would say to the girl. In the end, she decided to get rid of her stepdaughter. She fed her fugu fish, of course, not prepared correctly. In reality, not everyone dies instantly from this fish. The girl was just unconscious, that's why they rushed with the funeral, afraid she would wake up. The violin saved Karen's life, and the grandmother initiated a criminal case against the stepmother.